from Gotham, everyone. My name is Dominic, and today you're tuning in to the Comic Book Report, where we review comic books and graphic novels so you can get an idea of what to read. And today I can't wait to present a video to all of you. This is essentially a comic book list video, but with a couple little twists. This is what I'm calling 5 Batman comic moments that feel impossible. These are just really radical moments I found from different Batman comics that I just want to talk a little bit more about. As far as the collections I picked, the actual span of issues I have included in this book go maybe 80 or so years, which seems just amazing to me. But I try to cover a lot in this video, and I hope you like it. Before we dive in, I do want to shout out the channel sponsor, OrganicPriceBooks.com. If you're looking to pick up your own comic book collected editions, maybe some Batman books, I hope you'll consider checking out their website. You can actually find a link to it in this video's description, and if you see anything there you like, you can even use my discount code at checkout, TheComicBookReport, to save $2 off of your order. Please note if you use my affiliate link or code to make a purchase, I will earn a small commission, but it's probably the best way to support this channel. Thank you very much for considering. Now let's get started with some really amazing Batman comics moments. Before we dive right into those books though, I did want to give a very brief spoiler warning. Unlike my other list videos, I will actually be talking about main plot moments or events that happen in these 5 books. Please be advised some of these might be spoilers. Anyway, you've been warned. Okay, the first Batman moment I wanted to talk about that just feels impossible for this character comes all the way from his earliest appearance back in the pages of Detective Comics back in the 30s. These are the first couple issues of Batman, or actually Detective Comics rather, first couple appearances of Batman I should say. To showcase this, we're going to be looking at my Batman Golden Age paperback from DC Comics. They released a few of these volumes. This is what I have that collect the earliest Batman stories as opposed to something like a hardcover omnibus edition or what have you. But the first moment I wanted to talk about is Batman as a murderer. You heard me right. Batman actually murders in his first couple outings. And not only that, he actually uses a gun. Can you believe that? So I will be flipping through the first couple issues of the Detective Comics issues where Batman is showcased to give you a kind of sampling of what I'm talking about here. Why this feels so impossible to me is that I feel like nowadays Batman is most often associated with his code of ethics, or how he defines justice, which is this hard line of he will not murder, and he has an open dislike for guns after his parents were gunned down in Crime Alley. So the fact that in his earliest appearances we have him gunning people down, it just feels impossible. It feels preposterous to me. And I think it's almost a kind of misnomer, this idea that Batman has never used lethal force. I think certainly in modern interpretations of the character, that is most often the case, and yet here we have in the foundational ingredients for this character and in the series, him actually dispatching these criminals. Again, I just feel like it just feels impossible. I think that this kind of, does it undo a lot of what people think about Batman? I think maybe from a modern context, but I think when you take in the whole history of the character, it's maybe not surprising, especially in the era it was created in. Another thing of note, if you've never read these early issues of Detective Comics, they feel very kind of pulp fiction noir-y. There's kind of a grittiness to it that while we have in modern incarnations of Batman, there is something to it that just really sets itself apart. I really don't feel like we trod on this ground as much anymore for modern Batman. Every so often you'll have things that dabble in it. Like I think honestly Batman Year One really honored some of the roots of this character. But yeah, I think that there is kind of a grit and something unusual about this character, even when you read those earliest issues. I think for modern readers, it might be hard to digest some of this Golden Age material because the narrative style, exposition, and just the way they do art and layouting just looks really different from what you can expect from a modern comic. But I think if you are a huge Batman fan and you've yet to do so, you might owe yourself the opportunity to read some of his earliest appearances. Just for historicity and kind of completionist's sake, there is still a lot of gems from this period, and you might find your own impossible feeling Batman moments. The next impossible Batman moment I'm going to talk about is from the pages of Batman Venom by Denny O'Neil and Trevor Von Eden. To showcase Batman Venom, we are going to be flipping through my trade paperback collection of this comic story arc. Now, I will say this has been out of print for what feels like a criminally long amount of time. I can't tell you how many people comment whenever I showcase this book on why isn't this in print, are they going to reprint it, and all I can say is I certainly hope they do, because it's one of my favorite standalone Batman stories of all time. My impossible moment for Batman here is actually that he gets addicted to drugs, in this case a super steroid known as Venom. Yes, this is a derivative or similar in substance to what is ultimately used to create the character Bane, that kind of over-muscular brute that becomes one of Batman's nefarious rogues gallery of villains. Now, this story arc does occur before the creation of Bane, but we do have that same Venom substance, or at least a form of it. What I love about this storyline, though, is that it's so character-driven and grounded. Essentially, we have Batman unable to save a young child's life, and this child actually drowns. And it's not because of his lack of intelligence or detective prowess or his readiness to be at a scene of a crime or to be there in time. No, the reason this child dies is because he wasn't physically strong enough to save them. This obviously has a huge impact on the Caped Crusader, who feels like he has reached his limits, and the only thing standing in the way of him being a better hero is his physical strength. He's not augmented, he doesn't have superpowers like a Superman or things like that. And it is in this low place that we are introduced to this substance Venom, which is basically a steroid in the form of these pills. And we have Bruce Wayne, Batman, experimenting with this drug and becoming very, very strong. There's actually points in this comic where he's becoming too big for his costume and it actually rips at the edges. No, his costume is not armored, it's just fabric. And we actually have his musculature actually almost hulking out of the actual suit. But he becomes a bit manic. He becomes too violent. He becomes just not himself. He loses some of that characteristic control he often exerts in just about every situation. What's really impressive about Venom 2 is it's not only a sequence of issues that deal with Batman's drug abuse, but we actually have him go cold turkey and get off of drugs, and he kind of basically goes through withdrawal. We have actually a really gripping scene where he kind of locks himself in the Batcave until it's out of his system, and then he still has to kind of save the day and topple these bad organizations, and it's just incredible. There's so many other twists and turns in this volume, and I cannot speak highly enough about this comic. I think for me, this feels impossible because you don't expect Batman to be affiliated with drug use, and yet here we go. And yeah, there is some good morals about how he kicks it and he shouldn't have been on it in the first place, but I think it just adds so much dimensionality to this already long-running character. And I think, like I said, it just feels impossible, and it feels just very different and striking in the Batman catalog. Perhaps my biggest stretch on this list, we're going to be talking about Batman R.I.P. by Grant Morrison. Batman, rest in peace. This is a really phenomenal story arc during that Morrison era of Batman, and for me, the impossible moment in this is that Batman actually creates a backup for himself if he's ever mentally compromised, and he becomes kind of an autopilot, manic, Batman. But let me explain. So one of the things Morrison does throughout the run is that Morrison really rolls in the almost century of history we have for Batman in the run itself. And why I love that is that there's some really zany moments in Batman's history that aren't even covered in this list. But Morrison appears to have a great love for like kind of the totality of major characters, and I love the way Morrison just interjects so much of the kind of old or maybe arguably silly aspects of Batman's mythos into the run. We have appearances of Batmite in this issue, who basically plays this kind of voice in his head that he sees when he's in this just autopilot state. He goes by the name Batman of Zur-En-Ah, which is a derivative of its own throwback for an old Batman issue as well. But anyway, this is a really, really fun story arc where we have Batman just pushed to his limits, and we have him just totally compromised mentally, and instead of shutting down or breaking, we actually have the emergence of this whole other personality. It almost feels like an instance of dissociative identity, and I'm just really floored by it. I remember when I was first reading this and seeing Batman of Zur-En-Ah emerge, in those colorful colors like the yellows and reds and purples. It almost freaked me out because it's kind of garish or clownish in appearance, which I'm not sure if the original creator intended did this, but it does evoke kind of the clown or kind of Joker persona. You know, they're not Joker colors, but he almost looks clown-like, and he has this kind of grinning, manic personality. So there's even this layer of, you feel like he's kind of becoming his own enemy, and there's something about so unstable about it. Anyway, the moment just feels impossible, and I know that this character's now been in the mythos for years and years and years now, and we actually even have other creators tapping into the Batman of Zur and but I remember feeling like this just felt impossible and epic and different. And honestly, to this day, when I flip through this issue, I'm just floored all over again that this can be a wrinkle in Batman's mind, and that it was executed, in my opinion, just so very well. An impossible moment that I just really wanted to share. Don't miss out in Morrison's Batman. And hey, if you're enjoying this video and you've yet to subscribe to the channel, I would just like to invite you to do so. I'm always doing comic book themed videos like this, other comic book lists or reviews, unboxings, shorts, and more. Thank you for considering. Now on with the show. The next impossible Batman moment I want to talk about comes from the pages of Batman White Knight from Sean Murphy. This is a DC Black Label title, and if you don't know, this is not in the main continuity, so this opens up a whole other can of worms, because this feels almost like an Elseworlds story, and maybe I could have had something on this list like Batman becoming a vampire or stopping Jack the Ripper, but for this case, we are looking at Batman White Knight, and what feels impossible to me in this story is that Batman cures the Joker of insanity, at least by all appearances. This feels impossible to me because this feels like you undo something just essential for the Batman mythos, which is the kind of antagonism we have between the characters. But it does lead to a whole new source of antagonism between Batman and the now cured Joker, going by the name Jack Napier. I really did like what Murphy did here, kind of upending what makes the Batman-Joker dynamic work and still have it be so effective. In this world, we have Batman treated as kind of the violent pariah who's gone too far, and we have Jack Napier, who's now cured of his insanity after he takes an experimental drug, kind of trying to rebuild Gotham and leave it better than what he did to it initially, and I really loved the dynamic. Of course, Jack Napier, the once Joker, is the titular White Knight portrayed in the title, but I like it. I really enjoy it, and I think it does upend a lot of expectation that we've come to just assume for a lot of this Batman storytelling. I think the whole world of Murphy's Batman White Knight is really fun. If you don't know, this book actually has several sequels now that expand within this same kind of side universe. So if you enjoy what Murphy did in the pages of this, you definitely want to check out his subsequent sequels and spin-offs and things like that. But yeah, that's the impossible moment I wanted to talk about here. I think a lot of people culturally, especially if you're a casual Batman fan, you associate Batman with Robin or Catwoman, but also Joker. That is really high up there on the list, and the good versus evil paradigm we have there. So it almost felt impossible to me when you took that kind of bad Joker, air quotes, out of the equation, at least for most of this book here. To me, that would be akin to bringing Uncle Ben back to life in the series Spider-Man. But I really like that, and I think it allowed for a more mature and interesting narrative that honestly Batman was served so well by in the pages of Batman White Knight. So maybe impossible is not the best way to say it, but I do think it was off the beaten path and done in a way that I found to be so shocking or striking that I had to showcase it in this video. I think if you are a Batman fan or a Joker fan or a fan of their relationship in general, this is a must-read, not to miss out on book. A really compelling read that is first and foremost surprising and well executed. Rounding out the list today, we have Batman Failsafe by Chip Zdarsky and Jorge Jimenez. At the time of this recording, this is still the most current ongoing Batman title, so I tried to be relevant as well to current readers. The impossible moment we have in the pages of this book, though, happened really in the climax of the book, toward the end, where Batman actually re-enters from space, going through Earth's atmosphere and landing on Earth. He basically falls from the moon. Yes, you heard me right, and we'll get to some of the images of that toward the end of this video, but yes, this moment feels absolutely impossible. And if I'm honest, this was actually the basis for the idea of today's video in general. I saw Failsafe on my shelf, and I thought about Batman's fall from space, and I couldn't wait to talk about it all over again. I of course reviewed this already on the channel, but I just wanted to talk about it more because I think that that moment is so just eye-popping to me, and I am honestly on the page of I loved that moment. I know it was a really polarizing moment for a lot of Batman fans out there. A lot of people just couldn't suspend the disbelief. This was the jump the shark moment for the modern Batman title, but I loved it. I was glued in, and I think I was probably the target audience for whatever Zdarsky was trying to do here. And it's really amazing in an arc like Failsafe, which already had a lot of amazing elements like a mechanized Terminator-style Batman, a throwback to a Morrison-era character and beyond, that this is the crowning achievement for this book for me. This is easily the most noteworthy and memorable piece of the whole story arc, which was the fall from space. Now, I did love this arc tremendously, but that moment just shook me. It feels absolutely impossible because, of course, it is, but I loved that Zdarsky went for it. Pedal to the metal, no brakes. We had Batman fall from space and survive, and I couldn't believe it. It just absolutely floored me. I think after all this time to read Batman and still walk away feeling genuinely surprised or struck by a moment, I just think it's a real testament to the comic book creators and just the amazing versatility of this character that I can still be blown away all these years later by, well, a seemingly impossible Batman moment. Now, I will say that Zdarsky's run overall seems to be getting up and down reviews. I still like it. It's maybe not my favorite Batman run of all time, but I do really dig what I've read thus far. And I do think that this Failsafe arc is one of my favorite arcs in his run so far. But that moment from space, wow, it's just unbelievable. And as promised, we're getting to that moment right now. Check out this artwork from the incredible Jorge Jimenez. I mean, absolutely captivating. I could not believe my eyes when I was reading this through the first time, and even looking at it now, I'm still just awestruck. Really, really fun stuff, and honestly, this was just such a fun way to begin wrapping up this story arc, at least for me. I've heard it talked about different places online, but I'd love, even in the comments of this video, have you read Batman Failsafe? What did you think about this moment? I'd love to get some discussions going, because honestly, I unapologetically just loved it. I was almost screaming, yes, when I was reading it, because this is one of the most metal things I've seen Batman do in some time. Impossible or not. Okay, and I think that's going to go ahead and wrap up our video. This has been 5 Batman moments that feel impossible. I know this prompt was a little unusual, and even the list video itself was a bit different than what I usually do with these list videos. I don't usually do spoiler-heavy lists because I like people to be able to sample these videos without ruining the stories too much, but for a case like this, the point of the video was these wild moments, so I hope you enjoyed it, but you'll have to let me know in the comments. I would also love to see in that comic space, do you have Batman moments that you felt were pretty impossible or worth commending or talking about? Well, let me know. Let's get some discussions going. Maybe there's some Batman books out there I really desperately need to read, and you're the key to recommending it. To everyone who's watched this far, thank you so much. This was personally a really fun one to put together, and I hope you enjoyed it at least half as much as I did making it. And until next time, this has been the Comic Book Report. Please don't forget to leave your like, that comment we talked about, and maybe share this video with a friend. Thanks everyone again. Have a good one.